People expressed that they were overworked and underpaid.
We podcast more than I think any other podcaster on the planet. Like we do a 3-hour, roughly 2.5, 3-hour episode 2 days a week, and then we do another 2 hours the same days, but two more days a week. So that's what, 10 hours of content, and then sometimes we do some additional shit as well.
And that's why, for me, it was whack for Parks to take that stance, because Parks knows, and I've said that on Twitter, he knows. Parks, he's had, and that bothered me, because when we had our meeting outside at Parks' crib, he pulled Parks outside and he asked Parks, he said, yo, do me and you have any money issues or business issues? Parks said no. Without putting Parks' business out there, that's a lie. I've known Parks. Parks has engineered and recorded records that he hasn't been paid for ever.
That shit is a lot. I'm not gonna lie, it's difficult. It's difficult. Especially, there was some podcast turmoil a couple years ago, and that shit was honestly hard. It was hard on me and all of us that were involved. And some of it's our fault, and some of it was just fans being fans, you know what I'm saying?
The first month Patreon check, we should both just give it to guys.
Yeah.
Camera guys, Savon,
Like,
Alec,
fam, these people,
Parks.
everyone looks
Parks.
like they're
Parks.
working crazy.
Parks.
Parks versus Mal. See, Parks and Mal always had issues, as both have been longtime friends of Joe Budden. Parks and Mal also only know each other through Joe. See, they're different friend circles in Joe Budden's life, and they have different entry points into the Joe Budden podcast. Mal comes in on episode 77, and his first words were, "That's crazy."
Mal been phony.
Oh, shit. That's crazy.
His impact was quite noticeable, and while he would later become a punching bag for the Newport Mafia, he was able to take the Joe Budden podcast to a new level. Still, the Joe Budden podcast needed a couple tweaks in order for it to become the special force it needed to be, and that would happen when Parks first appears on episode 76.
Look at Parks. Yeah, look at Parks. I see him. Rory, this is 76, right?
Parks starts to become a real contributor to the show around episode 120 and develops his voice, and is in the early phases of what people would grow to love about him: his slick one-liners and profound understanding of the music industry. Now, Parks and Mal always had some underlying tension, as evidenced by an awkward exchange on episode 144, where Joe makes a joke about the Parks-Mal tension and reveals that Mal was not too receptive to Parks becoming a B-Mic. After that, tensions between Mal and Parks would become subdued, but that is until the presidential election cycle, where the two often found themselves on opposite sides of the political spectrum, with Mal being a hardcore Trump supporter and Parks being a textbook liberal. It looks like show banter, however, the show banter often reveals the underlying feelings co-hosts may actually have about each other. All of these on-camera disagreements, however, would pale in comparison to the actual drama that was about to come. Shortly after episode 423, Joe Budden would suspend Rory after Parks told Joe of a so-called secret meeting that took place, where all members of the show would air out their grievances in regards to how Joe was running the podcast. This secret meeting is a pivotal moment in the fallout, as it was initially positioned by Joe as a meeting Rory and Mal called to kick Joe's back in. Soon, though, it would be revealed that Savon and Alex actually had a big part to play in this meeting, and it was confirmed that Parks was the person who would inform Joe Budden of this meeting that would set everything off. Joe would later use this whole incident as a catalyst to suspend Rory, and while Rory was challenging Joe to fight on air, I think the real reason Joe was upset was that Rory was the one questioning how Joe was running the business. He was the one engaging in what Joe would like to call pocket watching. Joe, being the skilled narrative creator he is, would paint Rory out to be a B-Mic gone wild, who could no longer control his emotions, when in reality, Joe was looking for a reason to rob Rory of his leverage, but that would ultimately be ruined by Mal, who would not go with Joe's plan. Still, this represented an escalation of the Mal and Parks drama. It was pretty clear that Parks took part in the meeting, and I don't think it would be a reach to say that Parks had his own issues with how Joe was running the network. Joe often says that after the Spotify deal was lost, he paid everyone the same amount of money. However, he neglects to mention the workload had increased tremendously. Under the Spotify deal, they would record twice a week, and under the Patreon deal, they would have to work twice a week, but with much longer hours to create more Patreon content. This meant more editing, more timestamps. The pay stood the same, but they were working more, and this likely rubbed everyone at the Joe Budden Network the wrong way, not just Rory and Mal. Parks' backyard would also be the place where Mal and Joe had their infamous showdown that ended with Joe letting Mal know that the show was none of his business. Soon after, Joe's wheels start turning, and he pivots to replacing Mal and Rory with Ish and Ice. Joe often says he needed to buy time to get the accounting ready, but I think he was just buying time to marginalize Rory and Mal and weaken their standing with the audience. It was a leverage play, one that would allow him to craft narratives about Rory and Mal half-stepping, and also let the audience get used to Ish and Ice, who were new energetic additions to the podcast, because they were no longer attached to two people who were playing it safe as a result of the business dealings that were happening behind the scenes. Yes, Rory and Mal didn't give it up, but I think it was because they were discontented with their compensation and lack of accounting that was promised to them in the contract. Still, this would backfire because as Joe Budden replaced Rory and Mal with Ish and Ice, the fan outrage was so severe that Joe would have to bring Rory and Mal back in a reunion that was shortly lived. In the episodes where Rory and Mal returned, you could see they were not in favor of how Parks conducted himself. And this was likely because they knew that the Parks that spoke in front of Joe was conducting himself very different when Joe wasn't in the room. In one breath, Parks was expressing his discontent with the workload at the Joe Budden Network, and in the other, he was on camera saying the show must go on. After the cringy and awkward Rory and Mal reunion episodes, it's clear all parties will never be on the same page again, and Joe does the infamous episode where he would performatively fire Rory and Mal. Joe's theatrics would be cemented in podcast history, but it was Parks' actions that caused great disdain from Mal. This episode, Parks firmly sides against the Mixie Boys and admonishes them for their lack of professionalism, and even hints that they think they have become bigger than the actual show itself. And he even tells Joe, "Whose show is it, Joey?" This was a very bad display from Parks, and a great departure from what he likely was telling Rory and Mal behind closed doors. As time would go on, Parks became a laughing stock of the Joe Budden audience, and there would be a ton of memes clowning how he all of a sudden became Joe Budden's yes man. And it was quite sad to see, as when Parks first started, he was very lovable. Everybody loved this guy, his jokes, his one-liners, but when he chose to conduct himself in the way that he did, the audience turned on him, and it greatly affected how he was showing up to work. I mean, you could tell that the thing was really hard for him. And we also have to look at Parks. You know, Parks is not really Rory and Mal's friend. Those were his co-workers. So should he have sided with them? I don't think there was going to be a situation where Rory and Mal were going to hire Parks to work on their podcast. And there was a lot more money to be made with Joe Budden. This guy is where the money was going to flow. So Joe Budden was in a better vantage point to take Parks, and Parks made the sound business decision to throw Rory and Mal under the bus. And I'm sorry, y'all, the more I look at this situation, Parks just threw Rory and Mal under the bus. This is the guy that took part in the bashing session with Savon, Alex, Erickson, and they invited Rory and Mal into that session only to act like Rory and Mal were the ones that made the meeting happen. This is a confluence of events, one where everybody was seeking to launch narratives. I think Joe Budden sees this moment as an opportunity to really humble the Mixie Boys and get them in line. I still think Joe Budden erred in not giving Rory and Mal the accounting when he was supposed to. I feel like this breakup has a lot of legs, and I'm going to still continue to talk about it. And I still have more Parks content coming. As, like I said before, Parks made the right decision. With Rory and Mal's exit, Parks gets a raise. He also seems to be the second in command at the Joe Budden Network. He knows where the bodies are buried. He's worked with Joe on other shows. He's the reason the show sounds so good. I don't think the show could happen without Parks. If Parks don't show up to work, it's really hard to execute. And we will see how the relationship between Parks and Joe evolves. I mean, I don't know if Parks is loyal or if he's just loyal to the check. I think he's just too much of a businessman, and all of that "I'm going to hold you down" stuff rings hollow. And we're going to have to see how this evolves over time. But let me know about what you think of Parks versus Mal. Mal stood on business, but the business wasn't real business. It wasn't the cash flow. It was like moral street business, and Parks wasn't down for any of that. And I wonder if Parks and Mal will ever speak to each other. I doubt it. They have taken passive-aggressive shots at each other, and we will see how that goes. Alright, y'all, let me know what you think. I wanted to do a deep dive on the relationship between the two men because I think Parks versus Mal is indicative of how business and friendship should never mix, and is a big part in the breakup of one of the best podcasts of all time. Alright, y'all, follow me on Instagram, The Stop TV. Follow me on Reddit, The Stop TV. Follow me on Joe Budden Network on Reddit. That's actually the name of the Reddit. And also follow me everywhere you can, because I have a lot of content coming in multiple places. Oh man, this is the breakup that just keeps giving for me. I know a lot of people are gonna be like, Danny, why are you going back on old stuff? Why not? Don't we talk about Dame Dash and Hove still? Don't we talk about Kobe and Shaq still? Don't we talk about the Miami Heat? Don't we talk about the Beatles breakup? Yoko Ono? I'm never gonna stop. This is why the channel is called The Stop. It's an oxymoron. And you Joe Vengers getting upset, kick rocks. You know you love it. You love it. That's why you type the comments. You're engaged. You know that you like it. But you don't like what I say. But I'm going to say what I say because I want to say it. Anyway, I'm rambling a bit. This is Danny from The Stop.